Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I am delighted to be having a conversation with comics creator and fellow English enthusiast, Steve Stern. Steve, thank you for joining.
Well, no, thank you for inviting me, Jason. It's a pleasure to be on your esteemed podcast.
Well, thank you so much. It's a delight to have you. Folks out there will know you for Zen the Intergalactic Ninja, but I know that we'll also make our way to talk about a few other works as well. And curious about your origin story in comics. How did you get started in this world?
In the world of comics,
Hmm.
well, we'll never have enough time to fit all this in, but to give you the short version, when I was about 7 years old, I was with my folks. We were visiting my maternal grandmother in the Bronx. My mom had grown up in the Bronx. Family had moved here from Spain. And I was kind of a precocious, anxious kid. So my folks wanted to occupy me on the trip over to grandma's. And
Hmm.
in New York, in the Bronx, and in the various boroughs, there's these things called the L, which stands for the elevated train
Hmm.
tracks,
Hmm.
like the subway. And at all of the L stations, there were invariably a newsstand, which also had a lot of comic books there, right? So my folks buy a comic book for me. In fact, it was Superboy. Okay.
Nice,
And
nice.
I opened the book up right on the street there in the Bronx. And what happened at that instant is what I can only refer to as akin to love at first sight.
Mm-hmm.
And I just opened it up. I was kind of a precocious kid. I like to read anyway, right? So I open it up and I see this kid, a kid, super boy, in this colorful spandex. I guess among other things, probably just identified instantaneously with him, a
Hmm.
super powered young boy in this colorful spandex. And that was, like decades and decades and decades ago. And here I am still now writing and creating comic books. So, that's just never left me.
Love it, love it. Now, what has this world of working in comics, what's that allowed you to explore as someone who was an English major and appreciates story?
Yeah, well, when I got so enmeshed and involved in comics, I first attempted to not only write them, but draw them.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the first story I created, and I think I still have it here, in storage somewhere, was this like 10-page story called Ultraman, right?
Nice. Uh-huh.
And I drew it as well as wrote it, but the art was horrific. I could not draw to save my life. To this day, I can't even draw a straight line or something. So I realized that if I was going to do something in the comic book world, it was going to be right because it's all that was left. Can't do art, you got to write. And I always loved stories anyway. And so I kind of forced myself to become a writer.
Hmm.
And along the way, I always loved the English language. I graduated from the University of Miami in Florida with an English BA in English. And by then I had already written and had some comic book stories published.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah,
Very cool.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So as I mentioned at the outset, many people out there might know you for Zen,
Mm.
but curious about any favorites among your works, any favorite experiences, including Zen, but beyond.
Yeah, well, again, we'll never have enough time to cover this stuff, but something I thought I'd mention to you since we're fellow English uh, majors, right?
Hmm.
In the entire year of 2007, I lived in London, and it was an amazing year. Okay, loved it, and one of my favorite cities. And while there, I happened to meet the publisher of Marcosia Comics, uh, fabulous publisher. Harry Marcos, hence the name Marcosia, is the publisher. So I remember having lunch with Harry, and I also happen to remember that we had something for lunch that I'd never had before, which was pizza with an egg on top of it. I think that's
Interesting.
fairly commonplace in London. In any event, the meeting with Harry was because, of course, he knew about Zen, and so we had a lovely lunch. And I said at the lunch, I said to Harry, I'd like to write a Beowulf graphic novel for you.
Hmm.
And he kind of looked at me askance and said, "Well, Steve, you're American. I mean, Beowulf, the ultimate epic poem, but not from your side of the pond." I said, "Well, but Harry, I was an English major, and I really love the Seamus Heaney. I'm probably not exactly pronouncing the guy's name right, but the Nobel Prize laureate. I
Hmm.
love the Seamus Heaney translation of Beowulf. So he heard that, and that was enough. That plus my forcefulness to convince him to let me do the Beowulf graphic novel. Um, I attached an amazing artist named Chris Steiniger to it, and that book came out, in the around 2008, 9, and now we're 2024. It's a perennial seller
Nice.
for Marcosia. In fact, I just happen to have it here.
Oh,
It,
lovely,
it's-
lovely.
it first came out in as a soft cover and did
Uh-huh.
so well. Harry issued it in a hardcover, and you can get this book today. But the artist, I just have to show you if I might. I mean, the art in this book
Mm.
is
Hmm.
just amazing, right? And
Yeah.
Chris Steiniger went on to do many amazing projects, but this is like a major book of his. So not only did I do Beowulf for Marcosia, but then, and I also just happened to have it here. I also did a book that sells every year for them, A Christmas Carol. Okay,
Nice, nice.
Dickens.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I was able to get away with writing the Beowulf and the Christmas Carol graphic novels for Marcosia. So that's just a little something other than Zen, because 99.9% of the time when anyone interviews me, we're just basically talking Zen, which has been a blessing to me. So I'm happy to talk about that too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I love range and I love all kinds of stories and what genres can afford. So very cool that you've worked and written in the classic spaces as well.
Yes, yes, because like you, I love the English language. I
Yep,
love stories of all genres. So there you go.
absolutely. Well, you mentioned Marcosia. I was going to ask about First Comics and your work with
Mm,
First Comics as well.
yeah. Yeah. Well, first comics. Okay, first comics, way back in the day, we're going into the prior century, right?
Mm-hmm,
Was established by a guy named Ken Levin.
hmm.
And uh, one day in, I think, the year like 2010 or 2011, I get a call from Ken, and he says, "Steve, I'm, rebooting First Comics. And there's one comic book that I always wanted to publish, but didn't at the time, and that was Zen. So he wanted to meet with me. Now I decided, I would meet with this man in a New York second,
Hmm.
because among other things, and I wonder if you or your viewers and listeners might or might not know this, we're all kind of familiar with the movie Road to Perdition,
Hmm. Hmm.
which, it was an A-lister type movie with Paul Newman, Jude Law, Tom Hanks, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, I'm wondering, do you know that and you'll see why I'm mentioning this in a moment. Do you know that movie started its life as a graphic novel?
I do. I love that graphic novel. Max Allan Collins, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And the aforementioned Ken Levine.
Hmm.
Ken has been Max's friend and manager for a long time. And Ken is the fellow who took that graphic novel to Steven Spielberg.
Oh,
Okay.
awesome. Very cool.
So Ken uh, became one of the key people in that nexus between comics and graphic novels and film.
Nice,
And
nice.
and again, this you and or your audience may or may not know. Ken went on to effectuate movies like Wanted, that movie with Angelina Jolie. He represented Mark Millar. The Hellboy movies, because he represents to this day Mike Mignola. And of course, The Boys,
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
Garth Ennis. And The Boys is like a total worldwide phenomenon. Okay,
Yeah.
it's going to have 5 seasons. It just did its fourth. It's already got a spin-off called Gen V, right? And
Yeah.
there are two more spin-offs coming. So
Wow.
it's and Ken's the guy who kind of got all these things going. So now you understand why I was so happy to find out that Ken wanted to publish Zen. And
Hmm.
he has. First Comics has published Zen since about 2011.
That's awesome. That is so you are my 6 degrees to lots of people. That is
I'll bet.
amazing.
I'll bet. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the story of my life.
That is very cool. Um, Now, if I'm a listener out there and I want to find out more about Zen, if I want to find out more about your work, um, are there particular places that I should go, conventions or websites, things of
Yeah.
that nature?
Sure. Well, if anyone wanted to, say, purchase online some of the many Zen publications that First Comics has out there, you can go to www.one, the number one, firstcomics.com, onefirstcomics.com, and you'll see several Zen books there, as well as other books of mine. I also created and first has published the frickin' butt kicking zombie ants. Okay, I don't think
Nice,
I have
nice.
one of those lying around here, but I'll show you one other book that I did that First Comics did publish. I also did the Alexander Hamilton
I've seen that out there.
graphic
Yeah,
novel.
yeah, very cool.
Right. And the reason this happened is I went and I saw at the Pantages Theater here in LA,
Hmm.
Lin-Manuel Miranda's amazing musical. And
Hmm.
then I'd known that he had read the Ron Chernow's like really super thick, I don't know, 900-page biography of Hamilton. So, of course, then I read it.
Nice, nice.
And as a result, I wrote this graphic novel that a guy named Stan Timmons, who's been around for a long time, illustrated. He does really good period looking art,
Hmm.
and you might find this interesting. And you may know that Hamilton was born on in the Caribbean, on the island, little island of Nevis. And in my research for the graphic novel, I came across a kind of like a growing body of, I won't call it evidence, but speculation that Hamilton may have been of mixed heritage.
Oh, interesting, interesting.
And I put it in it, and that is indicated in my graphic novel.
Love
Yeah.
the
Yeah. You know,
research
when
process there. And
Yes,
yeah.
it's amazing, right? I mean, again, a lot of people just when they hear my name, they think Zen, but I do a lot of other stuff. If you To answer your question a little further, if anyone is on Instagram and they go to Stern 8506, I don't even recall how I got Stern 85. I think I didn't know much about social media at the time, so someone just quickly set it up for me, and it Stern 8506. But if you follow that, you'll know everything going on in the world of Zen and other
Awesome.
things, but mostly Zen. And there's a lot going on in the world of Zen right now, a lot going on. So there's that. There's also a Zen Intergalactic Ninja Facebook group, which if you go there and even join it, you'll get all this information about what's going on with Zen and other things that I'm doing. I'm a
Awesome.
little
Awesome.
busy, you know. I love keeping busy.
I was going to say, it sounds like you certainly are continuing to keep busy in the intergalactic world of Zen and other
Yeah.
things as well. So that is amazing and wonderful.
Yes, it keeps me young.
Yeah, yeah. Well, have we missed anything in the talk through that you want to make sure that fans and listeners get to hear before we close out?
One quick story about how I met Stan Lee, because I think someone who talked to you about getting me on thought you'd find it interesting.
Yes.
So I knew Stan, right up until when he passed. But here's how I met him. Just kind of an interesting little tidbit. Stan lived on Long Island, where I lived, in a town called Hewlett Bay Harbor, very nice suburban town.
Hmm.
And in the town of Hewlett, my uncle, Sid Ladenheim, he was the best buy there were no best buys at the time, okay, in big
Right.
stores for electronics and stuff. But so Uncle Sid, Ladenheim Appliances, this is where if you lived on Long Island back in the day, this is where you would buy your hi-fi and stereo equipment. Well,
Hmm.
so Stanley bought all of his equipment, electronics, from my uncle Sid.
Oh,
And
cool.
Sid, knowing what a big comic book freak I was, would have me deliver Stan's stuff to his house. And
Oh,
that's how I met Stan Lee. Yeah,
very
and
cool.
yeah, very cool. So I just thought throw that little tidbit in.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just picturing that conversation like, by the way, I also like comics. That's
Oh yeah.
nice
Well,
connection.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, Steve, a delight to talk with you. It's been a wonderful conversation, and I'm certainly glad to have you back anytime to talk about events that are coming for Zen as well as your other works.
Absolutely. This was a great way to scratch the surface. I can't thank you enough. And yes, we'll do it again.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Thanks,
Thank
Justin.
you so much.